Good morning, everyone, and welcome to week 3 of 28 of my Road to Ironman series. Last week was a very busy week, and as I hinted at in the previous video, this week I somewhat paid the price. There was a lot of workouts we were supposed to do that I just couldn't get done. But before we get into it, let's make some coffee. Alright, we have our coffee. Now let's go through week 3. So week 3 can be summarized as water polo tournament, excessive fatigue and hurting hip, and bike problems. All 3 of these made it very difficult to do any sort of real Ironman training this week, and we'll go into a bit more detail shortly here. Before we look at each individual day, let's just look at the overall metrics once again. So the total training duration was 10.5 hours, and 6 of those were from water polo. So that means I only got about 4.5 hours of actual training in. The TSS was 662, but I'll take that with a grain of salt since for the most part the TSS scores I entered in manually for the water polo games, but it's better than nothing. Swim duration was 50 minutes for a distance of 3.3k. Bike duration was 2 hours for a distance of 51 kilometers. Run duration was just under an hour and a half for a distance of 16 kilometers. And in other, which is water polo essentially, I have 6 hours and 10 minutes. So yeah, not great. Fitness score we have 81, fatigue we have 103, and form we have minus 19. Once again, still don't really know what that means. Taking a look at the health metrics, I'd say this week, and as always, my weight range from like 92 to 94 kilograms. My sleep this week was alright. Some days I got 5 hours, some days I got almost 8, so not terrible. But I was definitely fatigued going into this week, so I was trying to catch up on some sleep and rest. I'd say this was also a stressful week, given the circumstances of the week with the hip and the bike problems, but also work was somewhat stressful. I didn't feel great, I was just upset for most of the week, and you can see my HRV dipped a bit. We started off at 107, and then we dipped to about 89, 120, 100, 92. Okay, so my HRV wasn't terrible, but it did dip below 100. One thing I also want to add, currently, my VO2 max for running is 55 and for biking is 57. And then my watch says my lactate threshold is 166 beats per minute or a 427 pace. I don't trust the Garmin watch on that one, but I'm just going to add that to the metrics I present every week because I like numbers and I'm going to find it interesting to see the progression over the next weeks. In theory, this update should be relatively quick since I didn't do much this week. So let's get started, starting with Monday. Given that the previous weekend was a very busy weekend, I was already starting off this week pretty tired and fatigued. So Monday morning, I started off with an easy bike ride, just 1 hour long. The entire workout was just holding a flat power of 145 watts. So I biked for an hour, traveled a total distance of 22 kilometers, and got a TSS of 30. And I burned about 500 calories. I don't remember what I did for nutrition here, but given it was an easy ride, I don't think I had any carbs whatsoever, maybe just a bottle of water. What was particular about this ride was my bike started doing a lot of creaking, so I'll insert a video here. Which was really weird. and annoying and worrisome. Yeah, that kind of was the start of the downward spiral with my bike. But overall, this workout was okay. My legs were tired, but I was able to get it done. Later on Monday, that evening, I had a water polo practice. As always, the water polo practice consists of a swim set and then the actual practice where we do drills and scrimmaging. This was a pretty long swim set, about 50 minutes, where we swam about 3.3k. I burned 850 calories, and that gave me a TSS score of 70. Given I was tired, I found this swim set really difficult. My legs were just exhausted. It was hard to push. And then we followed that up with the actual practice. I don't remember what we did, but all I wrote was legs were cooked. So you can see there's a theme here. I was tired. Yeah, so those were the Monday workouts. Now moving on to Tuesday. So on Tuesday, the plan was to do a VO2 max workout and a mini FTP test on the bike. As you can see, I did not get it done. I was also then supposed to do an easy run that day, which I didn't do either. So what happened? So Monday night, I went to bed very late because of water polo and because I was trying to fix the creaking issue with my bike, which I later found out that day that it was because my seat post was a little loose, and that's why I was doing that creaking sound, and it was actually sliding down. I tried to fix it, and that night I thought I had succeeded in fixing it, but then the next morning on Tuesday, when I woke up and started doing the ride, I noticed the seat post was sliding down again. Oh, shit. Okay, I can't do this. And the bike was still making creaking noises. As soon as the creaking started again, I just stopped and I gave up. I was like, look, I don't want to mess around with my bike too much. I don't want to break it. It's not worth the risk. I was also still very tired from previous workouts, but also because I didn't get a lot of sleep that last night. So I decided to stop and just call it a morning. So unsuccessful workout. So after work, I went back home. And I had discussed with a few of my buddies that also have Cervelo P series, and Louis, who also has a P series. And they had mentioned that it was maybe an issue with the wedge used to hold the seat post. And so I tried playing around with it to fix it again. And the hope was that I could fix the issue and do that bike workout that I had skipped in the morning, do it in the evening instead of the run. After an hour of trying to fix it, no luck. And so at that point, I gave up and I said, okay, it's not happening. I'm not touching this bike again. I'm going to take it into the shop later this week. Yeah, to be honest, I was not in a good mood. I was pissed off and stressed. I decided I'm not doing the run either. There was no time left anyway. So I just went upstairs to the hot tub in my building and I just tried to relax and go to bed early and just rest up. So this ended up being more of a recovery day. Moving on to Wednesday. So Wednesday, I got a bit more sleep in preparation for this longer run, which I was trying to prioritize over that short, easy run the day before. But when I woke up, I did not want to get out of bed. As I wrote here, it was really cold in my room. I have a little thermometer guy just to know what the temp was. It was 15 degrees Celsius, which is comfortable, but it is pretty cold. I convinced myself to get out of bed by eating a honey stinger waffle and making some coffee. Those are always good ways to convince me to get out of bed. So I went upstairs to the treadmill in my apartment building. I did about 12 minutes of stretching and then I ran on the treadmill at a 1% incline. Once again, that's to make up for the lack of air resistance when running. Nutrition-wise, during the workout, I had one of the caffeinated Mortein gels. I had 2 water bottles, but they're about half full with carb mix. So I wrote here one of them had about 25 grams of carbs and the other one had about 50 to 60. One bottle was Yupica, one was Precision Fuel. For this workout, I wore compression tights or running tights to prevent chafing, so that helped. So fortunately, I managed to get the planned workout done. The goal was to do 16 kilometers and I did the full 16 kilometers. So the workout itself was first a 5-kilometer warm-up at about zone 1, then 2 sets of 2 kilometers at zone 2, and then 1 kilometer at zone 3. So for me, that was about a 4-minute 30 pace for the zone 2, and then a 4-minute pace for the zone 3. And then we repeated that. But as the workout progressed, my hip was starting to bug me. It wasn't too painful, but it was just bugging me. So on the second set, that 2 kilometer, I slowed it down to a 4-minute 40 pace. And then the 1K, I tried to do it again at a 4-minute pace. But yeah, by the end of that one, my hip was starting to hurt me. But I was able to get the workout done, ran for an hour 25, 16 kilometers. Given I couldn't get the workouts done the day before, I was feeling good. But when I was walking to work, my hip was really starting to hurt me. And so that was a bit worrisome. I was supposed to have water polo practice that evening, but because my hip was hurting and it was really starting to hurt that evening, I skipped the water polo practice and just decided I'm not going to push it and I'll try to rest a bit more. So that was Wednesday. Moving on to Thursday. So on Thursday, Louis decided to schedule a easy-ish bike ride for me because I wouldn't be able to do any workouts over the weekend because of my water polo tournament. But I decided to skip that workout because my hip was still bugging me and I was still just very fatigued. Oh, and my bike, I couldn't ride my bike, so I couldn't have done it even if I wanted to. Yeah, skip that workout. So Thursday was a rest day. Moving on to this weekend. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I had a water polo tournament. I had 2 games on Friday, 2 games on Saturday, and then 1 final match on the Sunday. So my whole weekend was booked off for this tournament. I wasn't going to be able to get any training in. Water polo tournaments are very demanding both in effort, like each match is very tiring, but they're also very demanding in terms of time. Just the commute to get to the pool, having to be there early for the team meeting and for warm-up, and then the match, and then commuting back from the pool. It was just a lot. It's definitely a full weekend thing. Yeah, this weekend had me really questioning my decision to sign up for water polo. I really shouldn't be both playing water polo and training for an Ironman at the same time. Ironman training is already difficult enough. There's just no time to fit in water polo in here. Unfortunately, I've already signed up for the water polo season this year and I've already committed to the team, so I can't drop out now. There's 2 months left to the water polo season, so I'm just gonna continue training and playing with the team, and I'll just have my Ironman training kind of work around water polo over the next few weeks. In terms of the water polo tournament itself, we had a lot of guys missing this weekend. First match, I think we only had 1 sub, which is not enough for water polo. And the second match on Friday, we had 2 subs. So all of us were exhausted on Friday. I think, yeah, we lost both those matches. On Saturday, we were able to win those 2 matches because we had more subs, but it was still very tiring. And then on Sunday, I think we won that match. I don't remember actually. I think we won, but it was a difficult and tiring game. What saved me this week was the fact that my parents were in town for the weekend, and so they were really helpful. They rented out a car while they were visiting, so they were able to drive me to the water polo matches, but it also meant we were able to bring my bike to the bike shop between my water polo matches and get that whole bike issue sorted. Fortunately, there was no real issue with my bike. It was just the seat post wasn't tight enough, and I needed a special torque wrench bit that was a bit longer so that it could actually reach the bolt to tighten it. So I bought one at the shop, and since we were at the bike shop, they adjusted my bike fit a bit and they actually raised my seat post a bit more. So yeah, fortunately we were able to get my whole bike situation sorted during this weekend. Additionally, another positive was, although my hip was bugging me earlier this week, during the water polo tournament, it didn't bug me at all, or at least it didn't prevent me from playing, and it didn't hurt anymore at the end of the week. So those were 2 positives. And maybe one last positive was that since we were able to fix my bike and I only had 1 match on Sunday afternoon, I was able to do an easy bike ride. So yeah, I was really glad I was able to get that bike ride done. It definitely helped put me in a better mood, just knowing that the bike was fixed. I think I copied this workout from the Thursday workout. Originally, the plan was to bike for an hour and a half, but after an hour of it, my legs were way too tired, so I thought, you know what, an hour is good enough. Let's stop it there. On this ride, I rode for 27 kilometers and burned about 600 calories. When riding on the stationary trainer, distance doesn't really matter. It's power, but it's still interesting to see. And then to close off the weekend, after that bike ride, I showered and then I went over to my brother's place to have dinner with my parents, my brother and his girlfriend, and to watch the Super Bowl. That was definitely nice to be able to just relax and take it easy that evening and to have a good meal. That definitely helped get my mood up again after this week, because I'm not gonna lie, this week was very disappointing and upsetting. I was just not happy. It's funny, with Ironman training, it's very difficult and time consuming, but I genuinely love it. But unfortunately, that puts me at risk because I find my mood day to day and weekly is heavily determined by my workouts. If I'm able to get the workout done and achieve whatever the plan was, I'm in a good mood. But if I have to skip a workout, if I miss one, if I get injured, then my mood just crashes and I'm really upset and in a bad mood. I'm trying to work on that, but the reality is I'm just a lot happier when I work out and when I do sports. I'm sure there's science behind it. I'm sure I'm not the only one. It's probably the endorphins or whatever. Like, I hate rest days. I much rather work out, but my body definitely needs the rest. Alright, so that was week 3. That was a relatively unproductive week, and it goes to show that with Ironman training, you have to be careful not to ramp it up too quickly. As we saw last week in week 2, I nearly got 16 hours of training in that week, but I accumulated a lot of fatigue, and I paid the price later in week 3 with a hip that was bugging me and excessive fatigue. On the bright side, in a way I got very lucky that the water polo tournament, the hip hurting, and the bike issues all lined up in the same week, because I wouldn't have been able to do any bike or run workouts over the weekend. So it was good that they just lined up that way, and because had they been staggered, I could have missed a lot more workouts in the next few weeks. So at least it just ruined this week, and then the next weeks we can lock back in and start training properly. I'm gonna end it there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next week. Bye.